Hallelujah. Good morning, Metro, and happy Easter. The holiday of Easter is associated with loud celebration and triumph. But as we've just heard, the Easter story starts from a quiet place of mourning. It's early on a Sunday, only 2 days after Jesus' friends and family have just witnessed the unimaginable. Their friend, their son, their brother, and their teacher experiencing a slow and painful death on the cross. While to most Christians, the cross is a symbol of sacred holiness, to the subjects of the Roman Empire, the cross was a symbol of fear and domination. Among all forms of state violence and execution, death on a cross was a punishment meant to inflict the maximum amount of humiliation and disrespect. It was a cruel ritual reserved for the most lowly, the enslaved, the poor, the non-citizens, and the political subversives. Death on a cross was the sentence you imposed on someone you didn't just want to do away with. It's what you did to someone whose voice and impact you desperately wanted to mock and erase. It was a public act of violence so brutal that it could serve as an example to others who might also dare to commit a similar transgression, to be disobedient to the empire. But on that quiet Sunday, the two women, both named Mary, go to the tomb to see where their friend Jesus had been laid. They'd been by his side all weekend. From his arrest to his crucifixion, they have never left him. And now they go to visit his body, one final act of care and devotion. But they arrive to find their quiet mourning shaken by exciting and unexpected news. Instead of Jesus' body, they are greeted by an angel of the Lord who appears to them and says that Jesus is not there, for he has been risen. The tomb had been under heavy guard by Roman soldiers because the religious leaders in Jerusalem so feared Jesus' message that even in death, he threatened them. But at the sight of this whole spectacle, the soldiers run away trembling in fear. And so now we're left just with the women and the angels at the empty tomb. The angel tells them that they've now seen the proof of the resurrection, and they are to be the first proclaimers of it. They are commanded to go and tell the rest of their community that Jesus is alive and has gone ahead of them into Galilee. On their way to proclaim the good news, both with fear and with great joy, they encounter the risen Christ himself. And they are told by him once again that they must gather the members of their community and go with him to Galilee. And that's where our story ends for today, with Jesus and the angels' commandments both telling the disciples that they must meet Jesus in his home region. Up until this point, the events of Holy Week, from Palm Sunday up to the resurrection, have been in the backdrop of Jerusalem. And the setting of Jerusalem is not coincidental, but I think very intentional, because Jerusalem at this time was the center of religious power and prestige. It was the home of the Second Temple, where the religious elite were born and bred, a place of great importance. Jerusalem is in the region of Judea, which is in the southern part of the empire, and it is where the wealthier and more elite members of the ancient Jewish community live and work. If we want to think of it in modern eyes, think of a place that's a mix of Washington, D.C., old money institutes of New York City, as well as maybe a big religious institution like the Vatican. Galilee, on the other hand, is a region in the northern part of the empire. It's known for being working class, of a lower income, a lower status. The Jewish community here is seen as less pure and authentic because they intermix with other cultures and other religions. And like people from different parts of the United States, they had a very specific accent that set them apart from Jews in the Judean region. But Galilee is where Jesus' ministry begins, not in the echelons of religious power and historic institutions, but in a region that's much smaller, of a lower class, and seen as less significant. This is where he calls his disciples, and this is where he returns when his work has been fulfilled in Jerusalem. Why Galilee? It seems so important to go back there that it is mentioned twice just in this one small passage. If you think of Jesus' life and ministry as a linear journey, it almost seemed like he's been building up, leading from Galilee to Jerusalem. Jerusalem being the true home of power and authority, the heart of the religious power and of the empire. This Lenten season, we've challenged ourselves to look for good news amidst uncertainty, fear, grief, and tragedy, both in Jesus' story and in our own stories. And that's not always been easy. There is more going on in the world today than we would ever have time to name in just this one afternoon. Our country is currently going to war with other countries, spending billions, if not trillions, of our dollars to go hurt innocent people abroad while people at home are not even getting their basic needs met. Our immigrant communities are living in a constant state of fear and uncertainty. And the institutions we've always thought we could rely on for protection and stability have increasingly turned their backs on us and given in to authoritarian demands. Is it even right to look for good news? Does searching for good news do injustice to those whose lives are being threatened and upended? Easter Sunday is the good news day we yearn for amidst the betrayal and the shock of Maundy Thursday, when Jesus is turned over and arrested. It's what gives us comfort during the horrors of the crucifixion on Friday, and Easter Sunday is what we grasp onto during the uneasy quiet and darkness of Holy Saturday. But while we celebrate resurrection today, we know realistically that the pain and the suffering of the last few days have not suddenly vanished, not in Jesus' story and not in our own. His body is risen, but the sting of what happened on the cross is still fresh. The grief is still real. The world, Jesus' world and ours, has not suddenly become safe or just or whole. This story, when you look at it like that, isn't necessarily the most comforting. But what it lacks in comfort, it makes up for in authenticity and honesty. Because the honest, authentic truth is that resurrection, as miraculous as it is, it does not successfully replace suffering. Rather, it comes to exist alongside suffering. It is not a denial of the pain and the injustice that has happened, but it is a declaration that pain and injustice is not all that is happening. No amount of miracles could take away what Jesus experienced on that cross, or the fact that so many people who loved and admired him had to witness it. But there is an unconventional sense of satisfaction and triumph that comes with knowing our Messiah endured the most brutal, undignified, and humiliating death that the empire had to offer, and conquered it in a way that no one could have imagined. Jesus came to Jerusalem, the very epicenter of power and privilege, not to take it over and to run it for himself. He didn't say, I see your institution, I see your role, I see your title, and I'm going to take your place because I think I can run it better than you. Rather, he confronts the institution itself, looks at the entire system, and turns it on its head. He didn't place himself in a position of power and authority, but rather he revealed where true power really comes from. He makes it to the so-called center of the world, and he triumphs over the worst possible form of violence that the empire could have conjured up. And to those who don't already know how this story ends, it might seem like the most natural move might be for Jesus to march right back into the heart of Jerusalem, to stroll in victory and take his rightful place at the throne. But what does he do instead? He goes back to his hometown, a much smaller, less prestigious place of seemingly little importance to the world. And that's where he lays the foundation of this faith that we gather here this morning, thousands of years later, to celebrate. Could this be good news? Our world is in trouble. While we here at Metro, we might be in closer physical proximity to institutions of great power, financial and political power, much like the Galileans, our community in comparison can feel much smaller and less influential when compared to these massive levels of wealth and authority that surround us. A lot of days it's easy to slip into a feeling of helplessness and despair, and to believe that such a small and humble community has no chance to counteract the oppressive and domineering empire of the world. But thankfully, Jesus' return to Galilee reminds us that true power and influence, the kind that comes from an authentic desire to live out truth and justice, can exist anywhere, even in the places we're told are small and insignificant. Jesus is from the Galilean city of Nazareth. And in one of the other gospel books, John, one future disciple, Philip, goes to tell his friend and other future disciple, Nathanael, that he's found the one who they promised, and his name is Jesus of Nazareth. And Nathanael replies in a way that seems a little sarcastic and says, "Can anything good come from Nazareth? Can anything good come from Nazareth? Can anything good come from Galilee? From a place that's overlooked and underestimated and written off as insignificant?" That's the question Jesus' followers asked, and that's a question we still have to ask ourselves today. Can anything good come from places like this? From communities like ours? Can anything good come from lives that don't feel powerful or influential or important? I think the resurrection answers that question with a resounding yes. Good news can come from Nazareth, and it can come from Galilee. Good news can come out of small church communities and very old and aging buildings surrounded by Port Authority construction and demographic changes and uncertainty of what's to come in our future. Good news can come from places the world tends to overlook, because those places of alleged insignificance are exactly the kind of places where Jesus chooses to be. Jesus arose in triumph, but he didn't celebrate victory in the halls of power or in the places of privilege and prestige. He celebrated it in the places that the world called small and insignificant. Why did Jesus go to Galilee? Because he knew true power doesn't belong to big cities. It doesn't belong to emperors or presidents or influential religious leaders or political institutions or politicians. And in our hearts, we know this too. Because like the women at the tomb, we have borne witness to it. We've seen small communities just like ours, organized to feed their neighbors after the most wealthy country in the world, I want to say failed to do so, but maybe refused to do so. We've seen grassroots groups like the programs we run gather to show up for immigrants and families living in fear. We've seen mutual aid networks, local churches, neighborhood groups step in to provide care, resources, and dignity when our larger institutions fell short. Again and again, the good news shows up not from the top, not from those with money or the most impressive titles, but right here on the ground, among ordinary people who've answered the call to do extraordinary acts of love. This is the good news of the resurrection, which is our good news to claim to. Because even though we are a small community with a small staff and limited financial resources, every day we get to seize the opportunity to do something good. We get to show up for people, to care for our neighbors in real and tangible ways. This is the good news that can happen when all of us, like Jesus, choose to live differently. When we choose to love when we choose to embody the kind of power that Jesus revealed. The good news isn't something that's far away, and it's not something reserved for people at the top. It's not something that is buried, but it is something that is already alive right here and right now in this very place, in this community, in this neighborhood, and in the ways we show up for one another. So maybe our question isn't, is there good news in the world? Maybe the real question is, are we willing to look for it in the same places where Jesus told us it would be? In our troubled world, this flowered cross behind me is a great reminder of the gift of finding beautifully good things in the most unexpected places. Just to think about it, this same structure that was once used by the world's most powerful empire to force silence and subordination now becomes our ultimate symbol of love and liberation. Our Messiah, who never wore a crown or sat on a throne, but rather who lived and died and rose again among the most lowly and the most ordinary. This is good news indeed. Like the women at the tomb, may we have the courage not only to bear witness to it, but to proclaim it proudly. Amen.